All right, guys, this is it. The final 3 chapters of Freak the Mighty. Are you ready? Chapter 23, The Empty Book. They won't let me visit him the first day, and Graham says I'll just have to be patient and let the doctors do their business. But I can't stand just sitting around, so I decide to walk over to the hospital, which Grim says is miles and miles, but suit myself. I know how to get there because Freak and I went yonder that way once, so he could show me the medical research building. It's not the same, though, without Freak along to turn the houses into castles and the swimming pools into moats. All I keep thinking is, what a jip it is to have to go into the hospital on your birthday. Finally, I get there and I see the Fair Gwen's car in the visitor parking lot, but Grim says I should leave her alone and let her tend to her son. So what I do is go around back to the medical research building and find this stupid little tree I can sit under. I have the old ornithopter bird with me, and I'm winding it up and flying it around, figuring maybe Freak will get the chance to look out the window and see it flitting by. That's my plan. And I'm under the puny little tree messing with the bird until this guy mowing the lawn makes me move. So I wander around to the front of the hospital, and that's when the Fair Gwen finds me. "Maxwell," she says. She gives me this great big hug. A wet hug, because she's been crying. "Max, we've been looking all over for you. Kevin wants to see you. He's making quite a fuss about it, and Dr. Spivak says it's okay, but just for a few minutes." So the Fair Gwen takes me inside, and I figure we're heading to the medical research building, but instead we go into the regular hospital. "He's in the ICU," she says. "So they're taking really good care of him?" "They're doing their best, Max," she says. The intensive care unit is this place where there are so many nurses, you can't hardly turn around without bumping into one, which I do as soon as we get there. Every patient gets a room alone, and there's this electronic gear that the Fair Gwen says is called telemetry, which means when Freak sneezes, the nurses know about it before he can even wipe his nose. I'm not scared at all until I actually go into his room and see how small he looks in the bed. They've got him sitting up with all these tubes going into his arms and up his nose, and Dr. Spivak is guarding him. She won't let me come too close. "I thought no visitors was the best policy for now," Dr. Spivak says, but what Kevin wants, Kevin gets. Dr. Spivak is a small woman with short red hair and a real stern face, and it's like she's mad because Freak wants to see me, or because I'll break some of her precious equipment. "That will be all," Freak says to her. "You are dismissed." The thing is, his voice sounds funny, not just faint and weak, but kind of whistly. Only when I get closer do I see he's got this weird little plastic button stuck in his nose. "It's called a tracheotomy," he says, holding his finger against the button, which stops the whistling noise. "Standard procedure to facilitate breathing." "Does it hurt?" "No way. It's cool. Listen to this." Then he puts his finger against the button to make his throat whistle a tune, which he says is the theme from Star Trek, although you can hardly recognize it. "So when do you come home?" I ask. Freak can't move much the way he's all set up in the bed, so he sort of shakes his eyes instead of his head. "I'm not coming home," he says. "Not in my present manifestation." I go, "What?" "The bionic unit is on red alert," he says. "Tonight they'll take me down there for my special operation. The next time you see me, I'll be new and improved." "I'm scared," I say. "Don't be a moron," he says. "You're not the one having surgery." Still wish they wouldn't. "Don't argue with me," Freak says. I have to lean in close to hear him because his voice is so small and whispery. He goes, "If you argue with me, I'll get upset, and they can tell in the telemetry, and then you'll get in trouble." So I just stand there like a lump and don't say anything for a while. I put the ornithopter on the foot of the bed, but I don't think he notices. "See the book on the table?" he says. He can't point, but I see the book on the table. "Open it," he says. The book reminds me of the dictionary he gave me for Christmas, except when I open it, all the pages are blank. "That's for you," he says. "I want you to fill it up with our adventures." "Huh?" "Write it down, dummy. I was going to do it, but now it looks like I'll be busy getting used to my bionic body. It'll probably take me weeks to learn how to walk with long legs." I put the book down. "You're the one with the brain," I say. "I'm the long legs." "Don't get me upset," he warns. "I won't have all the time, so you'll have to do it. Just write it all down like you're talking. Put in all the fun we had, the cool things we did, our adventures." "But you know I can't write, Kevin." "It's all in your head, Max. Everything you can remember. Just tell the story of Freak the Mighty. No big deal." I pick the book back up, but I don't say anything more about how hopeless it is, me trying to write stuff down, because I don't want to set off the telemetry. He does that himself about a minute later when he starts to cough, and before I can say anything, the room is swarming with nurses, and Dr. Spivak is telling me I have to leave. Out this second, young man, and let us do our job. They let me wait outside the ICU with the fair Gwen, who's just standing there at the window, wringing her hands and not saying anything. And then finally they come out and say he's okay, it was just a bad spell, but they have him stabilized. A while later, Graham comes into the hospital and she drives me home. Nobody talks much at supper that night, except when Grim opens his big mouth to say, "Poor Gwen looks like she's in terrible pain." I go, "Poor Gwen? She's not the one having a special operation." Grim and Graham just look at each other like they can't believe I'm so dumb, and finally Graham says, "Maxwell, dear, make an effort to eat your vegetables." That night, I put the empty book in the pyramid box for safekeeping. For good luck. Chapter 24. The Return of Kicker. The deal is, I'm not supposed to bother anybody at the hospital. Yeah, right, like me being there is going to screw things up. The way everybody's acting around here, you're supposed to shut up and not do anything but wait, which makes me crazy. So early the next morning, when Grim is still snoring loud enough to rattle the window panes, I get up and sneak out of the house. The way I figure, I can check on Freak and be back in time for breakfast. No harm done. It doesn't work out like that, to say the least. The sun is just coming up over Mill Pond, and there's a spooky mist on the water. You can hear all the frogs making a racket under the lily pads, and the mosquitoes sound like bullets whizzing by, and I have to kind of slap and run until I get clear of the smelly old pond. Moving fast, like the sun is chasing my heels, I'm running down this long, faint shadow of me that stretches out ahead, and you can't ever seem to catch up with it. I'm thinking with my feet like the rest of me is still asleep. Not that I'm completely alone. There's this one old guy who's actually cutting his lawn. He's got these headlights rigged up to his ride-on mower, and he's wearing pajamas too, like it's normal and everybody does it. When I get to the hospital, the streetlights are starting to click off. The lobby is empty, and there's nobody at the desk to tell me I can't be visiting the patients at the crack of dawn. There are plenty of nurses in the ICU, though, and they see me coming. This one woman runs right out from behind the telemetry station, and she's got her hands up to her mouth, and I'm pretty sure she's trying to shush me, even though I'm not making any noise. She's not telling me to be quiet, though. She's saying, "Oh, God, you must be Maxwell," even though she's never seen me in her life. I go, "Is Kevin back yet?" Oh, dear, she says. Is he going to be okay?" "Oh, dear," she says. "Oh, dear." Now, more nurses are coming out of the ICU, and one of them is the one I accidentally bumped into yesterday. When she sees me, she goes, "Better page Dr. Spivak. Kevin was her patient." That's when I notice that some of the nurses are crying and looking at me strange, and all of a sudden, I go nuts. Just go nuts. I'm saying, "No way, no way," and this nurse is trying to throw a hug on me, and I push her away. And then I'm running down the hall, and it's like I'm Kicker again, ready to just blast anybody who dare touches me, and I have to keep running. I'm skidding around corners and bumping into walls, and no one can even touch me, if they're even brave enough to try, and I just keep running and running until I get the glass doors that say medical research. The doors are locked, and it's dark inside. Behind me, people are running and shouting and calling the guards, and I punch my hand right through the glass, and I'm inside, skidding over broken glass through the dark, and I keep going until I come to another set of doors. No admittance. No glass this time. They're solid, so I can't punch through, and I'm kicking and kicking and slamming into the door, and that's when all the hospital cops catch up with me. A bunch of them jump on me, and I keep going, running around in circles like an accident of nature, until finally there's so many of them on me, I can't stand up anymore. They're putting handcuffs on my wrists and my ankles, and they're sitting on me going, "We're going to have to medicate him." And this one cop says, "With what, an elephant gun?" And that's how Dr. Spivak finds me, covered with cops. She's got this worried face leaning down. Her eyes are red and blurry, and she's saying, "I'm sorry, Maxwell. We did our best. Better let me bandage up your hand. You're bleeding." "He believed you," I say. "You said you could give him a new body, and he believed you." "What are you talking about?" "The special operation," I say, "the bionics unit." Dr. Spivak makes the cops let me up and says she'll be responsible, but they leave the handcuffs on me just in case. And the cop who's talking about needing an elephant gun has a nightstick out, and he's ready to bop me if I make a move. Dr. Spivak sighs and says, "Somebody get me a coffee, please." And then she looks at me and says, "You'd better tell me about this." So while she's bandaging up my hand, I tell her about how Freak had been coming to the medical research lab every few months to get fitted for his new bionic body. And Dr. Spivak's face goes soft and nods to herself and says, "Well, that explains it." "It was all a lie, wasn't it?" I say. "You were just telling him that so he wouldn't be scared." "You know better than that, Maxwell. You couldn't lie to Kevin. I tried a little fib on him when he was about 7 years old because I didn't think a child could handle the whole truth, and you know what he did? He looked his disease up in the medical dictionary." That's when I know she's telling the truth. Freak in his dictionary. Kevin knew from a very young age that he was going to have a very long life. That he was not going to have a very long life. He knew it was just a matter of time. So he was lying about getting a robot body? Dr. Spivak is shaking her head. "I don't think it was a lie, Maxwell, do you? I think he needed something to hope for, and so he invented this rather remarkable fantasy you describe. Everybody needs something to hope for. Don't call it a lie. Kevin wasn't a liar." "No," I say, "but what happened to him really?" "I could tell you all the medical terminology," she says, "but what finally happened is his heart just got too big for his body." There was talk about arresting me for busting up the hospital. The cop with the nightstick was in favor. But finally they released me to the custody of Grim. On the way home he goes, "Do you want to talk about it?" "Just leave me alone," I say. "You got it," he says. Last chapter, chapter 25, What Loretta Said. That was a year ago. I hid in the Down Under for days and days and kept the door closed, which is why I missed the funeral and the fair Gwen going away. Graham told me about it afterwards, how she couldn't stand to live in the house with Kevin gone, and who could blame her. Grim threatened to unscrew my bedroom door, but he never did. He just kept saying I should come out for Graham's sake, and sometimes she'd come down and say I should come out for Grim's sake, and so on and so forth until I finally gave up and came out. I don't know if this makes sense, but for a long time I felt like I was a balloon and somebody had let all the air out of me. I didn't care if I ever got the air back, because what does it really matter if we're all going to die in the end? That's how down I was feeling, and sorry for myself. Grim tried to tell me it isn't how long you've got what matters, it's what you do with the time you have. But that sounded so lame and puny next to freak dying that I just didn't want to hear it. This one day before school was supposed to start, I was moping around the backyard, thinking about how pointless and stupid everything was, and Grim says, "You know what? Most of us go all the way through life, and we never have a friend like Kevin. So maybe you should count yourself lucky." "Yeah, right," I say. "Suit yourself," he says. "But let's get one thing straight. You're going back to school if I have to hitch a rope to the bumper and drag you there. Is that clear?" So I went, and I hated every minute of it, and I especially hated how people kept feeling sorry for me as if it was me who had died. Finally, one time, even Tony D came up to me and said that it was a shame what had happened. And I could see that he really meant it, and I just blew up and told him if he ever felt sorry for me again, if I ever felt sorry for me again, I'd put him head first in the mill pond and pound him down to the mud like a fence post. So we're enemies again, just the way I like it. Not long after that, this winter by then, I saw Loretta Lee in the street. She still had on a neck brace and you could smell booze on her breath, but what do you expect? A miracle just because she lost her head and acted good for a couple of minutes? Anyhow, Loretta sees me and she said, "Did you hear about Gwen? She's in California and she's got a new boyfriend. His name is Rick and they're crazy about each other. Ain't that good news?" "I guess so." "Take it from me," she says. "It is. So what are you doing these days?" "Nothing." She gives me this long look and goes, "Nothing's a drag, kid. Think about it." I thought about it all the way home. That night, I pulled the pyramid box from under the bed and got the empty book out of the pyramid, and I'm thinking, who are you kidding, Maxwell Kane? You haven't got a brain. And that's the truth, the whole truth, the unvanquished truth, is how Freak would say it. So I wrote the unvanquished truth stuff down and kept going for months and months until it was spring again and the world was really and truly green all over. By the time we got here, which I guess should be the end, I'm feeling okay about remembering things. And now that I've written this book, who knows? I might even read a few. No big deal. And that's the end of Freak the Mighty. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will have some questions posted for you to complete, and then there will be a final project for the entire book, which Miss Vogel and I will assign to you in the coming weeks. You're welcome to go back and re-listen to the story. I wish we could sit and chat about it because it's a really deep story and it's really hard, especially at your age, especially at Max and Kevin's age, where they were just freshmen in high school. To have a friend pass away is very, very difficult. But I think if we think about the effect Freak had on Max and the effect that Max had on Freak, and that Max was going to be a better person after all of this happened, the book has a deeper meaning. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.